We're good.
Welcome, everybody. We're just going to give it a few minutes. We have about 70 people registered today. So like I said, we'll just give it a few minutes for everybody to jump on. Thanks for being with us.
Hey, Danny.
Hi, ladies. I'm sorry I'm late. I was
There she
having
is.
technical. Yep,
No problem. Glad you can make it.
technical.
Oh, good. We have Melissa Ham, who I've never met, but I've spoken to her husband.
All right. Well, we're going to get started with our program. I just want to say hello again. Thank you all for joining us today. Allow me just a minute to start with a few housekeeping items. All participants will be muted unless they're presenting today. We will, however, be encouraging everyone who is not part of the panel to use the chat to make any comments or ask any questions you may have during the presentation. And Tracy Weaver on our team will be monitoring the chat throughout the program. Thank you, Tracy. Please feel free to say hello in the chat now, share who you are, where you're from, if you're a parent, where your child attends childcare, if you're a childcare teacher or staffer, where your program is located in the name. And just wanted to share, if we do happen to have any technical difficulty during the event and it can't be worked out, we'll be in touch with you with a follow-up email with any relevant details or next steps. But hopefully everything goes smoothly today. I'm Jen DeBell. I'm the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Association for the Education of Young Children, and I'm joined by Kimberly Early, our Director of Public Policy and Advocacy today. We'll be facilitating our session. For those that aren't familiar with us at PNACE, we're a statewide nonprofit membership organization of about 2,500 early care and education professionals. And as the affiliate of the National AEYC, our organization is actually part of a broader network of 52 affiliates across the country and 60,000 individual members. Our mission is to be an effective voice for high quality early childhood care and education. And we do this through policy development, advocacy, and professional development and supports for early childhood professionals. Our organization is a very proud partner in the Start Strong PA campaign, our co-host for our event today. Start Strong PA launched in January of 2019 with a mission to support healthy development, working families, and the economy by advocating for increased access to and affordability of high-quality childcare programs. You can learn more about the campaign in PNACE and sign on to join our advocacy efforts at www.startstrongpa.org. And Tracy's going to drop a little bit more info in the chat for you if you're interested in checking that out. So I'd like to quickly recognize the fact that we do have a few legislative staff and administration staff joining us today, and we really appreciate them joining us. We do have Katie Buchanan from State Representative Lou Schmidt's office, Kimberly Johns from State Representative Allette's office. And we may be joined today by Judy Wilson from Senator Mastriano's office and Karen Grimm Thomas from the Office of Child Development and Early Learning. And again, appreciate your time today and listening to the panelists. If time allows, following the panelist presentation, we may open up for comments or questions from the media or elected officials or their staff. But the purpose of today is, of course, to hear from childcare programs and parents. We believe it's really critical to get your input about how the $1.2 billion coming to Pennsylvania from the American Rescue Plan is best spent to support your programs and families who need them. We also want to make sure that while these funds are labeled rescue dollars, I just want to reiterate, we know our industry needs more than just one-time support. So we need your ongoing advocacy and help to make sure we achieve some permanent increases in funding going forward. So to ensure everybody has kind of an equal understanding of the support childcare has received to date through the pandemic, I'm going to quickly walk us through some slides. And in addition to that, I just wanted to flag that Tracy is going to share a one-pager link in the chat that would also be useful to you after this session that also describes all the funding we've received to date. So moving to our slides, you can see the first one is a chart that shows the money that we've received to date. The first column is $106 million that we received through the CARES Act, and that was allocated directly through the Child Care and Development Block Grant. So again, directly from the federal government, $106 million is the portion Pennsylvania received. Then the middle column, I have to give a big shout out and thank you to the General Assembly and Governor Wolf and his team. This money was actually discretionary CARES Act dollars that our state chose to spend on childcare. It wasn't required, it was their decision to do so. And a whole lot of advocacy by us and our partners in Start Strong PA, and likely many of you with us today made that happen. So we're very excited that we were able to win that funding for childcare. And then finally, in December, another federal relief package passed, and Pennsylvania was able to receive $303 million through that package dedicated to childcare again for Pennsylvania. So how has all of this money gone out? The first three rounds of money all came out of those two first columns you saw on the prior slide from the CARES Act dollars. So in round one, if you were a child care program, you received money based on your program size and type. There was also an add-on if you cared for subsidy children, and also if you were located in what the Office of Child Development and Early Learning considered to be a child care desert. Rounds 2 and 3 were only based on programs type and size. And for programs with us today, this is the money you received during the summer and fall of 2020. As I mentioned, the relief package that passed in December, the $303 million, some of this money is still being driven out. Likely you're seeing it this week, next week, but $212 million was dedicated to childcare providers, again, based on program type and size, to go out with the regular subsidy payment this month. In addition, funding was dedicated for a few other things. There was a waiting list for the new pandemic relief award that OCDEL created, so $3 million was set aside to serve all of those on that waiting list. $87 million was reserved to continue the base rate increase that Governor Wolf announced and started this year. And then finally, about $1 million was reserved for administrative costs for the early learning resource centers, who are the ones, as you all know, are getting that funding out to programs. So the American Rescue Plan, this is why we're here today. We're really excited that nationwide, this piece of legislation had about a $40 billion investment in childcare. You can see here it's split out into 3 buckets for childcare stabilization, money through the Child Care and Development Block Grant, and then finally a smaller amount of money for the child care entitlement to states. So right now we've received guidance on how one of these pots of money can be spent. We're waiting for that second bullet, and that will help drive how the Office of Child Development and Early Learning and the governor's office decide how to spend the money. But we're supposed to receive about $1.2 billion from this pot in total. So we're very excited about that. Obviously unprecedented amounts from the federal government to support childcare programs. So this is really where you all come in today. Start Strong PA and Panacea are looking for your input as to how this money is best spent going forward. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kim for our first panel.
Great. Thank you so much, Jen. So I am pleased to introduce our first panel. First, we have Linda Musey. She's the director of the Learning Station in State College. Hi, Linda. Next, we have Cordy Henry. Cordy is the director of Cradle to Crayons in Huntington County. And then we have Ashley Nevling. Ashley is a parent and she resides in Center County. So thanks so much for you all sharing with us today. Our first question for the panel is, how should the American Rescue Plan funds be used to increase the share of children in high quality programs and support families who need childcare to return to work? And Tracy is going to put that question in the chat for everybody who is not on the panel. And the way that this will work, I'll first call on each of the panelists to give some initial thoughts to the question. And then I will open it up to anybody who's on the panel to kind of give some additional ideas or comments based on what others have said. So if you're not on the panel and you'd like to offer your thoughts, comments, and ideas, please utilize the chat box. You can insert your comments there, and our goal really is to get as much feedback as possible. So please do not be shy with your best thinking. So we'll start with Linda Musey. So Linda, just to kind of restate the question again, how should American Rescue Plan funds be used to increase the share of children in high quality programs and support families who need childcare to return to work?
So, hi, everybody. First of all, I think the most important thing is to get parents back to work. Up until about now, we've been open strong since last May. We have been operating at about 30% occupancy for our children. So we are really hoping that this will help enrollment go back up. We have, we're licensed for 209 children and we have about 65. So things have been super tight for us this past year. I can tell you also that not only as we're beginning to pick up, our problem is really becoming employees, where once we would start people off at maybe $10.50, $12.50 an hour, we are not able to get people for less than $15, $16, $17 an hour. And that's cumbersome because we are really ratio based. So first of all, I think that we need to be able to sustain ourselves and be able to then grow, which is important across the state of Pennsylvania. I think another thing too is that we do need more contracted spots. I think spots should be per school and not necessarily per child. You know, people move around for many reasons, and it's been really hard to sustain ourselves without our subsidization that we received through the kids that we normally would be subsidized kids. I'll make one more comment on that. When we first reopened, most of the children that came back were our subsidized children. They were not our private pay. And that has had an impact on our revenue completely.
Great, thank you so much, Linda. Next, we'll go to Cordy Henry. She's the director of Cradle to Crayons. Cordy, can you give us your thoughts on the question? You'll just need to unmute, Cordy.
Linda, we kind of saw the same thing that you did. We was closed for about 4 months. When we reopened, we also was opening with our subsidy children, not our private pay. So we operated for a few months to where we was not back up to capacity. At this time, we are up to capacity. We've taken on some more subsidy because there's no longer a waiting list in our county, and I don't think that there is statewide if I'm correct on that. So that was an impact, a major impact on us. As a result, we had a lot less money coming in. I think some of the places that I think the funds could be used. One thing, I do believe that we need to reinstate the ERA. That's not because we have taken such an impact. We don't have the extra funds. Our funds are lower than what they was. I know a lot of us spend our ERAs to replenish and purchase things in our environment. I have 12 staff that work for me. I have 6 that has been able to take advantage of the ERAs. I had 3 more that just enrolled in the TEACH program. That's pretty important to my business because that was an incentive. And I believe when the ERAs was taken, obviously staff morale was down. But it did help. It was when we were hiring or when I brought my staff back, I actually increased their wages because there was more work to be done. And like I said, I know that impacted my business financially. I think other places that money could be spent would be on capital funds. Money's coming in either in grant or small interest loans to where we can make purchases for the things that we don't have the extra funds for. If we want a privacy fence put in, or we want something to add to our play yard, we don't have those extra funds right now. So I actually even think having capital funds that we can go out and use for what we see fit in our business would be a major plus. And I also believe that more money needs to be contracted, of the new money needs to be contracted for infant and toddler and pre-Ks and STAR 3 and 4 and possibly 2 family childcare businesses, not to the pre-Ks or other agencies. Those are places.
Great, thank you so much, Cordy. We appreciate your comments. So Ashley, you're next. From the parent perspective, what would you say, what could we do to support families who need childcare? And then if you have any thoughts around increasing the share of children in high quality programs.
Yeah, so I'm currently expecting twins due in July, and I have a 4-year-old daughter who's currently in a program, and if it's 2 more children was not really in the plans, you know, to add in, but unfortunately our family is above the ELRC subsidy guidelines. So we're kind of in that middle section of families that were not considered in the low income section. For my 4-year-old, we would qualify for the Pre-K Counts program, which is fantastic, but that doesn't really help us out for the 2 infants that will then be 2 toddlers and 2 preschoolers, you know, all through their lives. We're going to have to double that childcare fund. If I would like to continue working, obviously I could quit my job and stay at home with them. Then they're not getting the experience of being in a childcare center, and I'm not getting the experience of working. You know, I have to kind of put my life on hold, which happens, you know, that's kids are kids. And sometimes we have to make those sacrifices, but I feel bad for them. My daughter started in an infant program, and she is just, it's a fantastic what she can do. And that wouldn't have happened had she been at home with me. So to think about possibly not being able to give these 2 those same opportunities, because we're kind of just in that, you know, there's that middle class, I don't know what to call it, but that income bracket where you don't make we make too much to qualify for ELRC. But really, once we pay all the bills and pay the childcare for 2 infants, we really don't have much left, if anything left, at the end of the month. So I do think there's definitely a group, and I don't necessarily think that it would need to cover the entire cost of their childcare expenses. But I do definitely think that there's a group in there that has a need for some sort of assistance in paying for childcare that doesn't qualify for ELRC, and the twins will not be age eligible, obviously, right away for the pre-K counts program, which has that higher income guidelines. So I definitely think there needs to be something in place for that group of people, because it's tough.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Ashley. Very, very telling comments from a parent perspective. So now I'm going to open it up to the full panel again to share any additional ideas or thoughts that you might have based on what another panelist has said, or something that hasn't been mentioned that you weren't able to mention earlier. And so you just go ahead and unmute yourself and share the additional thoughts.
So I'll start. I agree with the big ticket items because it's a lot of money to do lots of different things. You know, if you need a new roof, you know, you're talking $30,000. That is really difficult to come up with oftentimes. The key area is, though, that I am extremely concerned about is not having to raise tuition rates in order to cover the cost of, you know, like 90% of teachers, at least in my facility, have their college degrees. They're working on their master's degrees. They're working on their associate degrees or their CDAs. And I've got to be able to afford to be able to pay for those teachers once they're super qualified. And by the way, my staff, I have some staff who've been with me for 40 years. And so it's hard to pay somebody $12, $13, $14 an hour when in the state of Pennsylvania, we're looking for longevity and we're looking to be able to retain and educate our staff. And that's been the goal, you know, for a very long time. We can start with the Rendell administration. So we need help, especially if we are going to be able to keep qualified teachers and not send them off to the public school. Because that's what they do. They get a couple years under our belt and then off they go, and we can't compete with them. I tried to hire a girl from Penn State the other day, and I wanted her so bad. Well, she was making $16.50 an hour, which was wonderful, and she had full Penn State benefits and retirement. Well, we don't do any of that. I mean, I feel so ashamed that I haven't been able to do that for my staff. And I want to be able to do that. You know, it's important. They've devoted their life to our families and our children. So I think that we just need to get the community stabilized, and hopefully these funds that come in from, you know, the federal government as well as the state government will allow us to compete with the market and the market rate without having to, you know, dip in. For Ashley, we're talking about $3,000 a month in childcare expenses for her. Well, who can afford that? She doesn't make $3,000 a month. I know, you know what I mean? So we need help.
I agree
Excellent
a lot
comments.
with what Linda was saying. I think especially with like the capital fund idea, being able to, there's such a push for us to enroll more children and help more families, but a lot of us are already at capacity and don't have room to take more children. So to have a little bit more flexibility with what we could spend the money on, especially like I'm in Mifflin County, and I know most of our providers have the same wait lists that I do. And my wait list is 9-10 children deep for every single age group. And I get calls daily, and I cannot accommodate any more families because we do not have the space. I'm blessed. We don't even have a staffing issue at my center right now, but I don't have room for them. Even if I could make more space, I would at least have the staff. But to be able to maybe build onto an already existing structure and have a little flexibility with how we would do that so that we don't necessarily have to completely relocate our center. Or even like Ashley was mentioning, some sort of funding assistance for families who fall over that ELRC guideline. We have 2 pre-K counts classrooms. We are able to serve 30 additional families through that program, which is wonderful. But a lot of those families come from in-house with us and transition into pre-K, but they've been paying for full price childcare for the last 3 years. And to be able to offer them, for the younger siblings, some sort of support at a higher income guideline would be wonderful. Because I know they would take advantage of it if it was there for them.
Absolutely.
If I could kind of piggyback off of that, families need to be made aware of what high quality looks like before they even begin researching childcare options. Advertising for Keystone Stars and high quality childcare subsidy options should be promoted and demonstrated so families understand what to look for when choosing a program. I thought it was great that Ashley already knows what her options are, but you know, all high quality programs should have the same features, and to ensure that the customer has a reliable option available close to their home or their work. And they need to be educated on what comprehensive programs entail, how to find them, how to navigate the funding system in order to immediately enroll when they begin employment. The waiting lists complicate things. It complicates the consumer's lives, and parents struggle with available work but no money to pay for care. If we had a true sliding fee scale that takes into consideration everything a family needs to properly raise their children, you know, that would be optimal. Parents need to understand the value of parent engagement in the program, which I felt with Ashley, with what Ashley was saying. Feel welcome to participate and open to share their needs, you know, as a family. And then once we know what these needs are, the program should have access to resources to assist them on an individual basis. We have a child and family advocate in-house who's able to help parents connect with the resources. It would be great if we could see that type of service at the ELRCs for all families as well.
Great, thank you so much, Chelsea. Great thoughts, and we are definitely recording all of these. Just another plug for those in the chat, continue to insert your comments there. We are monitoring that and recording those comments. Just had a question. Does anybody have any thoughts around the lack of childcare in your area? Is that an issue in this region? And then also any thoughts around non-traditional hours of care?
So I can attest to, before COVID in our area, many of my programs had 20 to 40 families on our wait list to get into childcare. And our programs were, before COVID, operating at full capacity. So now we're not at full capacity, not due to space, but more due to staffing. But we don't really see the wait list. I have a couple of programs that have no wait list, and we have spaces, and we're advertising those spaces. We let our ELRC know that we have spaces, but we're still not seeing all those children come back after COVID. So, and how much of that is COVID? How many still aren't working? We have talked to some of the families that, you know, the relatives are home, so they're watching their children, you know, until they go back to work. So
Great, thank you, Shasta.
I will say, as far as staffing in my facility, I have not had an issue with staffing, but then I overstaff. I have always overstaffed in mine, so I did lose 2 staff over the past year. We was closed March through mid-July. I did lose 2 staff. However, it did not affect me because I do overstaff. So I was fortunate in that respect. And I was fortunate to, one of the ones that I did receive the PPP grant. So I was also able to use those funds in order to help pick up the slack from being less children when I opened. I was able to use those funds to pay wages. So, which was definitely a major help to me. But, and I have hired 2 staff back. One actually has a degree in elementary education. And I have a new staff that is just in the process of getting everything ready to come back. Again, I feel fortunate in that respect that I didn't have to deal with not having enough staff to open. We just opened at a reduced weight. Well, about 1/3 of our children is when we opened back up. And we kind of did a gradual increase just simply because parents were not ready to come back, or they was able to work from home and keep the children at home and what have you. However, you know, then as a result, the money was not there either. But I was able to do it through the PPP grant as well.
Great.
The one
thank you.
other,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Linda.
The one other thing that we've kind of seen over this whole COVID time is that in some ways, socially, emotionally, the children who got to spend time with their families was amazing. Like whoever gets 2 months or 3 months to actually stay home and do these things. And then sort of the flip side of that is like, oh my gosh, what were they doing when they were home? Were they just sitting in a box somewhere because they've lost like this huge skill set? And we were on a Zoom meeting the other day with Carrie Benninghoff, our representative, and he's like, well, what's so big about infants and toddlers? Well, hello, 0 to 5, 90% of all learning occurs. Our teachers are fully engaged. They're fully interactive. We get kids to do things for us that they would never do at home. I mean, you know, we can actually get them to eat vegetables, you know, regularly.
Yep.
You know, it's kind of crazy, but there's so many skill sets that those kids have really missed out on because they were at home. And I'm talking about for in some of our families, you know, we're talking about professors or people that work for the university or the hospital for that matter. And even though they're educated and they know that these things are important, you try to do a Zoom meeting right now with an infant who's crying and wants to bed, you know, like there are lots of different skill sets that went along during this time period, which leads me to the next section, which is really that mental health piece for young kids. It's crazy anymore. I can remember, you know, 30 years ago, there'd be like 1 child. Now there's like 4, 5, 6 in a classroom. And so we do need the resources in the state of Pennsylvania to really be able to help our children, whether you're talking about central Pennsylvania or you're talking about Philadelphia or Huntington or Williamsport or, you know, all of the outlying areas. The parents and children and childcare centers, or we would call a school, we need those resources. It's just costs more money to do things, you know. An apple is $1 a piece. Well, I want my kids eating 2 apples if they would, you know, like, so, and it's not just those things, but it's the whole picture that gets put together. And I can tell you, you guys, like, I am so thankful for Tracy and Jen and everybody else trying to really help us navigate through these times, because it has not been easy. And you can also send me some of those teachers if you have any extra, I'll take them.
Linda said about mental health services, and we're also seeing that. I mean, we believe that all players in the field of early childhood need to be supported, from children and families to administrative and teaching staff. And we need to begin in like a more robust way to explore the connection between mental health and early intervention and find links between the two to provide more comprehensive services to children and families, and more support staff to assist with the development of, you know, well-functioning children. We need to fund research to support the connections between mental and behavioral health and proper interventions. Maybe we could put these services at the early learning resource centers so that families don't have to navigate a large number of independent agencies, none of which who have therapeutic support staff services available. So if early intervention were housed like maybe at the ELRC, they could do screenings consisting of vision, speech, hearing, dental, overall developmental, that 45 days at the start of the school year, and promote faster implementation of services. The intervention services and curriculum support in the form of individual goals could then start at the beginning of the school year and continue throughout the full school year. We'd also really like to see some sort of crisis services for immediate help when a child's experiencing a mental health breakdown. Linda said that's happening more and more frequently, and there's more of them. And the children, families, and staff shouldn't have to wait 9 months before receiving services and supports, and children shouldn't have to continue to suffer until medical insurance approves the case, or things like that. It's time to fill the gap with immediate services. There's never been a case in our history where a parent has refused services. Instead, they're on board, but they get frustrated every day when doors get closed in their faces as they try to navigate a really confusing system. We have a child enrolled to begin with us that was screened in October and was just approved for services this month. That's 7 months of waiting, and he only has another month of pre-kindergarten left before he goes to kindergarten. We all know that a full year of intervention services would have had him prepared for the transition to elementary school. So now instead, he's going to start behind his peers and may end up staying behind them. We really need a major overhaul of the way early intervention services are delivered.
Great point. Thank you, Chelsea. I'm going to turn to Jen to kind of share some thoughts and comments that have come through in the chat.
Sure. So a lot of comments echoing our panelists. We have some chat items that relate back to getting more funds to programs for capital costs and allowing them to make improvements to their facilities. On the family affordability side, getting to Ashley's comments, and congratulations, by the way, on your twins on the way. To have a program like Pre-K Counts at the infant toddler level. That was one of the suggestions. There was also a suggestion in the chat around having a system that's easy for parents to navigate to help them find high quality childcare. So back to that comment about advertising, making sure parents are aware. There were some comments around subsidy funding to programs being done in a fairer way, and noting that for programs that don't have a high number of subsidized kids, that the money, it can't all be put on private pay parents, to make up for those costs. So raising some major issues with the system, right? We know right now programs don't get what it costs to actually provide the care for the subsidy. And then, what do you do about your private pay families? So some really good comments, some comments that might transition us well to our next panel, which is focused more on the workforce. A lot of echoing around the need for staff. Tracy, you said this is something we've heard a lot in the chat. It absolutely is. Over the last few weeks, we've been hearing more and more that programs are having wait lists, not because they don't have the room, but because they can't hire the staff to care for the children. We've seen a lot of convenience store, fast food establishments raise their wages in the last few weeks to like $15 an hour with benefits. And a lot of you in the chat were saying those are things I can't offer right now, or you're trying to, do some small increases, but it's not enough. So we're competing with these other industries, and obviously we want to keep people in our field because they love to do this work, but they need to be paid a fair wage. And then I did want to quickly address, there was a question about what the Education and Retention Award is. And just to make sure everybody's level set on that, I think, Linda, you mentioned it goes back a long time, about 17 years the program has existed. And the idea behind the Education and Retention Award is the money goes to programs for their staff that have reached higher degrees and credentials, whose program has reached a star 2, 3, or 4. And the whole idea behind it is to try to retain those professionals in the program so that they don't go leave to work at a convenience store or somewhere else. And, one day we hope that everyone will be compensated appropriately. You know, if you have your bachelor's in early childhood, that you're compensated equivalently to like a K-12 teacher. But until we get there, the Education and Retention Award was a good way to recognize the hard work put in to reach the higher degree. And then, like I said, retain the professional. So this award was taken away late fall, early winter this year without any public input to the process. It was a decision made by the Wolf administration. And just want to put in a plug, Start Strong PA is working very hard as part of the state budget process to bring it back using federal funds. Certainly there can be improvements made, but we are as frustrated as you that this was taken away. This is something I think we've heard in every single of these forums across the state. So glad people are raising that. I'm sure the next panel is going to talk more about that perhaps and how it's impacted their program. So just, I want to segue now. I see Linda, maybe you want to say something and then we'll segue to the next panel, Kim.
Just so the representatives understand, it can be something anywhere between like $800 for a staff member up to like $4,000 for a staff member. And you know, that's a lot of money. For every $1,000, it's 50 cents an hour, and it does make a difference. And it does, at least the teachers feel that they're working towards something to better their families.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks so much. Thanks, Jen, and thanks, Linda. So we'll transition to our second panel. Thank you all for those that were on this panel and those that wrote in the chat, your thoughtful input. We really appreciate it. All of the issues that you've raised are so important to building a stronger childcare system in Pennsylvania. And so we'll definitely use those to advocate for such. So our second panel, I'm pleased to introduce Chelsea Hallinan. She's the Director of Programs at Begin With Us in Altoona. And then we have Shasta Wagner. She's the Education Director of the Cambria County Child Development Corporation. And then we have Allison Newland. She's the Director of Hide and Seek Christian Childcare in Lewistown. So again, just continue to plug the chat. Feel free to enter your comments. For those that are not on the panel, enter your comments into the chat. And so for the second panel, our question is, how should American Rescue Plan funds be used to support the childcare workforce? And Tracy will put that information or that question in the chat. And first we'll start with Chelsea. So Chelsea, what are your thoughts around the workforce and how the American Rescue Plan funds can be used to support the childcare workforce?
So at Begin With Us, we've been in operation for 29 years this June. We've been a Keystone Stars provider since 2002, and we were the first provider in the central region of the state to be designated at Star 4 status. Keystone Stars has allowed our program to provide a whole child approach to nurturing and educating young children, supporting families, and offering a comprehensive curriculum, and by providing highly qualified teaching and support staff. We've been a PA Pre-K Counts grantee and a lead agency since the inception of the program in 2007. And then additionally, we were part of the Keystone Babies pilot program. So we've received multiple grants over many years to support the continuous quality improvement of our program and thus the community at large. All of that history within our program and within the state of Pennsylvania aids us to present to our present platform, view of reform that we're able to offer our thoughts and suggestions about revitalization. So we have an opportunity more now so than ever to stabilize the workforce and support teaching staff for all of the children. We need to ensure dependable staffing in early childhood and build a parity in the workforce. We've learned many lessons from being a Pre-K Counts provider. The ability to pay our lead teachers a decent salary and the ability to pay our assistant teachers a decent wage has certainly created an established program, and turnover has decreased as a result of that. Children deserve nothing more than consistent practitioners and teaching staff. The children shouldn't get to know their teacher for 4 months before he or she leaves to go to a school district mid-year because of better pay, better benefits, and more recognition as a professional. Early childhood staff have the same qualifications as school district staff, but they're not compensated fairly. They're held to higher health and safety standards, yet they're viewed as babysitters and not facilitators of higher level thinking. We have skilled teachers that facilitate play and the acquisition of knowledge through firsthand experiences, which sets the foundation for future success of our youngest learners. We need the financial resources to properly fund our teaching staff and our support staff to allow for occasional absences, paid time off, and assist in covering breaks and paid planning and preparation time. Programs need funding to properly give them breaks away from the children and assist them during transition and difficult times. And the field needs to be promoted so they're to be recognized as the professionals that they are. And then the ELRCs need to continue to help with easy access to Rising Stars and teach for our staff to continue their formal education in community-based settings. So forums could be developed in local communities with groups of directors who wish to pursue additional degrees and credentials, and forums would help build strength and unity. We need to be able to afford to keep our administrative staff to provide consistency as well. For many years, we've heard the same rhetoric about the lack of necessary supports that our field needs. We've been hurting and struggling to do what we love to do. And without all the pieces of the puzzle that allows for a proper, relaxed, consistent, nurturing, and safe environment for the young children. So far too long, we've had skimpy investments. We've tried and tried to make things work, but we're consistently told that we're falling short. In reality, if we keep shifting away for what our youngest citizens truly need, we're damaging our society. We deserve to see an investment that will stabilize the field and provide a return to our country's future. Early childhood education, if properly invested, can be the strongest part of the recovery of the United States of America. It could change our future. It's exciting for us to share what we've learned over many years and experiences to be able to support funding that will be available to make long-term systematic changes in the field of early childhood education. So thank you for allowing me to speak.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chelsea. Next, we'll turn to Shasta. Shasta, can you share your thoughts?
Sure. Thank you so much. And thank you, Chelsea. I'm just going to say ditto now. That was a really great summary, I think, of where we all are. And definitely we need to look at our profession as a professional profession. We are educators, and you're right. We have Cambria County Child Development Corporation was, we've been around since 1972. We were also a pilot program for the Keystone Stars program. And we have worked with many of our area other childcare programs to help them succeed in STARS. And it's been a great collaboration, and it's a great way to improve our program quality. With that being said, just looking at, I'm not going to rehash everything that Chelsea just said. I'm just going to pick some points to add on. For instance, this past year, we lost over 40 employees across all of our programs that were taking, because of COVID, there was an open workforce market. So they were able to go to school districts and Head Start and other educational areas that, they were making more money. And, great for them. I patted them on the back, said, we'll miss you and we'll be here if you ever want to come back. Some took positions that were not in their early childhood field. They have a degree in early childhood, but they went to a bank or a gas station, convenience store, or I had one to go to a utility company because they went for the benefits and the pay increase. So that, it's also sad when you have teachers who went to school, have their certifications, and they're not even working in our field. So that's very sad to me, especially when that's their love for working with young children. Benefits, prior to the the Affordable Care Act, all of our employees had benefits. Our teachers, our assistant teachers, our teaching staff, all had medical coverage. But with the act, we were no longer available or able to offer the health care that we had to offer under the ACA. And healthcare is a huge cost that we can't afford. And many of our employees need healthcare. They can't afford to pay for it out of their pocket, and we can't afford, I mean, it's over $10,000 per employee per year. You know, that's almost a salary. You know, that's almost paying for a whole employee, a part-time employee. So, you know, that's very expensive due to the fact that we're in a small group category and we have to pay higher rates. So that's medical benefits, you know, we try and give what benefits we can, you know, retirement, you know, health, dental, you know, things like that we can afford, but we just can't afford that healthcare, which also our employees are looking for as well. You know, so, you know, is there a way that we can collaborate and break down the law that, you know, we can have large group discounts and make it more affordable for childcare programs to come together? I won't hash on the ERA, but that was really a huge hit for our teachers that rely on that money every year. I mean, we're talking thousands, some of my teachers, that's thousands of dollars they did not get this year. You know, so that was a really tough pill to swallow this year. So, I mean, it was great that, you know, they shared the wealth across the Commonwealth, across that, which is great. But, you know, I also felt, you know, we work hard for that Star 4. We work hard for that money. They went and furthered their education. You know, they worked really hard for that. So, that's just my little take on the ERA. But I think we really need, one thing that I'm really worried about is we have a really great investment coming our way. I mean, was it $2 billion?
Mhm.
And I would really hate to see that be a short-term fix, you know. And we've seen that a lot of times. We've been involved in grants like that. Oh, here's some money, do something with it, you know. But then the funding quits, and then where are we? You know, we used to have our Learn teams, but then funding was cut, and we had this great, you know, initiative, but then funding was cut. And I'd really hate to see, this is a really nice pot of money coming our way, and I would love to see a jumpstart for the future of early childhood. How can we use that funding? You know, can we set aside funding for early education like we do pre-K counts, you know, and give subsidized funding per slot in our programs, and then work that into our tax base, you know, that we are supporting those infant and toddler slots as well as our preschool slots as well. And I really think that restructuring our subsidy program to include some of the slightly higher income families don't quite meet those guidelines, or they have multiple children, you know, putting in those redeterminations to open funding for the families that need it. I know we have families that are subsidized and they don't use it. And then I have families, you know, who are like, well, I need the subsidy. Right now, we don't have the wait list, but that, you know, has been something in the past. So I think we really, our STAR programs, like Chelsea said, we're held to higher standards than school districts. We're held to higher standards. You know, with COVID, you could see that school districts were just beside themselves. They have to wash their hands. They have to use hands. Oh my goodness, we do this every day. My kids, they go and wash their hands when they come in. They touch their nose, they wash their hands, and they're two. They do it when they're two. So I think it's really time that we jumpstart early childhood, like Chelsea said, as the professionals that they are. So I think we really need to think long and hard about how we can use this money as a jumpstart to standardize that and support it, and continuing after the funding's gone. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Shasta. Allison, could you share your thoughts around the workforce and what can be done with the American Rescue Plan dollars?
Not to overly echo Chelsea and Shasta, but Hide and Seek has also been around for over 25 years. We've been part of Pre-K Count since its inception as well. We have gotten expansion over the last several years and have added partners as the lead agency, and we now have 4 partners across Mifflin County. And being a small church-based center, we are very limited on our space available because we have to use what is provided through the church to us. And we are also very family minded and try to keep our rates as low as possible to, not put our families in huge debt just to pay for childcare and for preschool. And I think, much like Shasta said, we don't need a Band-Aid fix. We need something long and permanent, something that is going to be built to better our state and better our early childhood. We've had a lot of Band-Aids over the years, and they seem to just, hold us over from one year to the next, but nothing has really sustained the industry and helped the industry in a meaningful way. Us alone, I know we've been very, very blessed that we have pretty much all the same staff from when we closed due to COVID. We were only closed for about 6 hours. We got the waiver right away. Obviously, Pre-K Counts didn't operate, and we were very limited on what families we had at the time. But it's been a struggle every day since, just to keep things afloat, especially with the PPE supplies, trying to make sure the children have everything that they need, especially socially and emotionally, because it's been a really, really hard experience. A lot of families have struggled because they've lost jobs, and the children struggle because of that. They feed off of our emotions, their parents' emotions, and we have seen that, like everybody else has mentioned, with our children as well, that they really are struggling, which in turn affects the staff. And I think it's very important to compensate our staff, but I also think there is a lot of talk around compensating for education and degrees, and we're not also looking at longevity in the field. I have a lot of staff who have been doing this for 15, 20 years, sometimes within our center the whole time. Other times they've worked at other centers and then have come to us. They are at that stage in their life where they don't really want to put forth the time to get their CDA, or they're not computer savvy enough to do so right now, and everything is virtual, so it's really not the best option for them. But they are some of the best teachers we have. They've never been eligible for the ERAs. They are on the bottom of the salary scale. And while I think it's important for us to start paying staff more, I think we need to look beyond education and degrees and also look at experience and what they bring to the table and how much effort they put forth in their classrooms. And it's often our infant and toddler teachers who were the ones without the degrees. A lot of the degreed staff go into preschool because of Pre-K Counts. They have those higher subsidy rates coming into the center because those families are funded at a much higher rate than a private pay family would be. And those teachers are going to be paid and compensated because of that money coming in. And we looked at doing the infant toddler contracted slots in our center when it first came about, and we didn't have enough families who would qualify at that time, even now, who fall under the subsidy rates for ELRC. So I think also looking at funding that in a way that's similar to Pre-K Counts might open more doors, not only for our families financially, but for our staff as well. Benefits would be wonderful. I have looked every which way over my last 6 years here, trying to find a way to get the staff medical benefits or retirement. And it has just been one door shut after another because it's not feasibly possible unless we really, really ramp up our rates for the families. And I don't want to do that to them. They struggle to pay what they pay now. I know that they can't afford to pay more. And we have, we've worked really hard to try to increase our staff over the years. And so they're all losing their medical assistance benefits because they're making too much for that now, but they're still not making what they can make if they went and worked at McDonald's or Walmart, or I mean, I heard Sheetz and Starbucks all just raised theirs as well. They can go make coffee all day, not get hit, kicked, punched, spit on. You know, we're dealing with a lot of behaviors and not being compensated for it as well. And I think that's really, really hard for our staff. The education retention awards, I think that was, what's the way to put this? I think it was kind of like a moral kick in the gut for staff morale this year. You know, a lot of staff had been working really hard, have worked through the entire pandemic, are wearing masks all day, are trying to help these children and these families adjust to all these changes. And I had 3 staff within my center for sure that just finished a CDA or just got their associates, and this was their first year that they might have earned that award. And to be told they're not even getting close to what they would have gotten had it been kept the same was really kind of, you know, it was kind of like saying, oh, you worked really hard for your degree, but sorry, no, you're not getting it this year. And to not know 100% for sure if they're ever going to earn that, it's a little scary because that's a really great way to encourage staff to further their education and to try to make themselves a better educator in that way. And looking at funding for Teach, I think that would be great, but I think we also need to think about the fact that a lot of centers are really struggling right now, and Teach has a center component to it. The centers are required, or the programs, any program really that participates, is required to pay a portion of that education and to increase the staff or give them a bonus when they complete so many credits. And I think a lot of us are struggling right now that can't be a priority. And it's a shame because I think a lot of us would otherwise participate and help our staff in that way. But to maybe, you know, fund it in a way that Rising Stars was funded, where they got a good portion covered and the centers and the programs didn't have to kick back into that in the long run. Especially for administration who maybe already has a bachelor's degree or even a master's degree. If they want to further, you know, I have a master's already, but I'm not done learning. In order to be an educator, you have to be a lifelong learner. And to feel like I struggle financially, knowing I make more than my staff, I can't even imagine what they're feeling when they want to further their education. If I feel kind of like, ooh, I can't do it. And I think that's about all I have.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Allison. Those were really great comments and you touched on a lot of areas. I'm going to open it up to the full panel to share any additional thoughts, ideas, comments that you may have thought of since we first started the second panel. So feel free to unmute and share those additional thoughts now.
You know, the one thing that oftentimes people don't really understand is that we are ratio based. And I gave this example last week. If I were able to pay somebody $15 an hour and I charge $50 a day, it takes me 3 children to pay that one teacher. That leaves $5 an hour to do whatever else: food, electricity, liability insurance, workman's comp, payroll taxes, rent, and you cannot do it. And so we're not like a Target that can just say, okay, open up 4 lines or 5 lines or 6 lines. I can only have 4 children and 1 teacher. Now, of course, that changes as they get a little bit older, but still infants and toddlers is expensive to run if you can get a great teacher to be in those classrooms. And I think that that's the one area that people don't really understand, is that we have this parameter around us, this box that says, well, you could only do this. So if I charged $100 a day per child, then I definitely could do it, but I can't. I won't be in business. And I think that that's just an important piece to.
Absolutely. Any other thoughts or ideas from the panelists?
There's also not enough emphasis put on about infant and toddler teachers, and it's more than just the care that they're providing. You know, there's a lot of components to the program that make it high quality. And those things all take, you know, cost money and take time. And, you know, so we need financial resources to pay for this, to pay the staff well that care for infants and toddlers, because people don't value that as much. Even the infant and toddler teachers don't always value that as much. Allison said they're, you know, they want to get into a pre-K program so that they can be making more money. And if we were paying them more as infant and toddler teachers, they would respect what they're doing more, because that development that's happening at that time is so important, and there's just not enough value put on it. So, you know, it's exhausting. You know, we need to support the staff, the infant and toddler teachers, you know, with materials and equipment and experiences and training. We need to support them.
Thank you, Chelsea. Any other comments? All right. Well, we'll turn, Jen, I'll turn to you quickly to share any thoughts and comments from the chat that have been raised.
Sure. So a few specific comments were to develop a qualified and approved group of substitutes to have a flexible pool that programs could use when needed to give some support to staff. There were some comments about some greater support to some of the more small or independent childcare programs versus some of the bigger companies that offer care. General support in the chat for supporting staff education and accessing those opportunities. Some additional comments about the ERA and perhaps making some improvements to it to recognize the staff who have long tenured experience in the field versus just the degree achievement or CDA achievement. There was a comment about family childcare, which is something we didn't talk a lot about today. Some greater support for in-home care, whether that's coaching to the providers, initial money to help them start out and then support them over a number of years. So that idea was raised. There was also an idea about the local early learning resource center, kind of taking a look at what are the local wages being offered, what are things that are working well for hiring and retaining staff. And the commenter made the point, yes, you're all competitors, but at the same time, it would be great to have the LRC look at it from a perspective of, you know, everybody helping each other out. And then I see one more comment here about the ERA being reinstated. I'm just looking at it now. If we have the option to pay it out over the entire year. So another idea about improving the ERA. We've heard a lot of these as well. Like as people have asked for it to come back, we're also hearing ideas to improve it, and that's great. But those were the major themes I saw in the chat.
Great, absolutely. Thanks, Jen. All right, well, thank you everyone who's participated on this panel, and thank you to those who have written your ideas and comments in the chat. We really appreciate it. We've recorded them and we'll be compiling all those. I'm going to turn it back over to you, Jen, to kind of close us out and give us some final thoughts.
Sure. So I just want to say a lot of your comments kind of led into my final point, which is our childcare system is not only important to the programs and the teachers and families, but overall community and the functioning of our economy. You're not babysitters. There were a lot of comments about that in the chat too, and from our panelists today. Another one of our panelists on another event said you were building brains. I like that. I think it's a great terminology to be using because that's what you're doing at the youngest levels. I just want to put in another plug. If you want to work along with us to hopefully bring back the Education and Retention Award as part of our state budget process, we are here. We would love to have your help in that advocacy work. In addition, a lot of you made the really good point that this 1.2 billion is amazing, but most of it is one-time funding. There are opportunities now at the federal level where there are proposals being put forth to provide sustainable funding that's ongoing for childcare. So we're going to be letting you know about opportunities to work alongside us to advocate for that as well, because certainly this is amazing and we want it invested well, but we want to make sure that the money doesn't go away in 3 years, and that some of this work is sustainable, certainly going forward. So I just want to take a moment to again thank our amazing panelists. Those of you that took time to comment in the chat, thank you for your great ideas as well. If there are any media who joined us today, feel free to leave your information in the chat or contact us afterwards and we'll be in touch. In addition, just want to flag that after the event, you're going to receive a survey. It has about 10 questions in it and then an open-ended question at the end that asks you how you think you would best spend that $1.2 billion. For those that perhaps made comments in the chat, it's another way for you to give us some more feedback. And we really encourage everybody to take the survey. That is going to close at the end of this week. And anybody who participates from this event will be entered for a $100 gift card. And there will be 2 winners. So just a small enticement, please take the survey. We want to get as much feedback as possible. This is our last of a series of 12 panel discussions that have happened virtually across the state. We've received amazing feedback at Panacea, and our partners have shared some of the feedback they've received. It's been amazing and so helpful as we look to develop recommendations to the Wolf administration and General Assembly about how we can best spend this money. So again, thank you. Please take the survey and take care. Appreciate everybody's time.